So anyway, first and foremost, Richard and I, we talked on the phone. We went and we did independent tests before they came and did their tests. We tested all of our cows. They all tested brucellosis free. All right. So then the states came in and did their test, and brucellosis free, everything was fine. But they continued the investigation and the harassment and the enforcement, even though this this child, has nothing to do with the milk you drink. So I'm working with Pete Kennedy. He's the president of the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund. He says, the FDA has the states doing their dirty work all the time, and you should file a public records request to try and see if the FDA is coursing the states. Because as this whole thing was going on, the state of Wisconsin started coming after me to try and get me to testify, to give up the names of the farmers, who these farmers are, right? Because there was only one farmer that we did the tests on. We also got a sheep farmer, a goat farmer. They don't know who they are, where they are, so they want all this information, who the members are, and this and that, and they have the sheriff serve me with this demand for interrogatories. Now, if you can imagine the timeline here, all right? I got to give you this timeline so you can really understand it. The bike trip is supposed to be a 40-day bike trip. I wasn't prepared. It took 50 days. All right, I met Lauren in Southern California just as we're finishing up. We had a great experience together. And then, I finished in Malibu, California after 50 days. I haven't seen my family, my children. And I come home to Wisconsin, and that's right when the real enforcement started. The sheriff's at my door, where they're demanding all this stuff. And I said, no, I'm not gonna, wrote him a letter back and said cease and desist. And so that was a demand, all right? Then they escalated up to what's called a subpoena, and the Department of Justice got involved. And they subpoenaed me to this deposition where I was supposed to give all this testimony and the answers, And I didn't know what to do, so I just showed up without an attorney. And I was like the smart aleck guy, like, you take an oath of office, I'm gonna, show you can't do this to me. So I went to the Secretary of State of Wisconsin. I got a certified copy of the Attorney General's oath of office. That's what I did. And because I'm reading the Constitution, what happened to freedom? You should eat what you want. These statutes are unconstitutional, and you can't do this, and I don't really know how to explain it, but I know it's wrong. And gosh darn it, I want some answers. So I'm showing him his oath of office, and I said, is this your signature here where you swore to take an oath in God's name, so help me God, to support and defend the Constitution? He wouldn't answer that question. Of course, we had the video camera going the whole time. He's getting red in the face here. And so finally, they just adjourned the deposition without actually posing any questions to me. Wow. Big no-no. They screwed up. So they file an action in civil court, right? And they're trying to get a court order to get me to testify to turn state's evidence. Well, we know the Fifth Amendment says you can't self-incriminate. So what they're doing is giving me derivative immunity. So anything I say can't be used against me. They're giving me immunity every, what? You shot a couple people? It's no big deal, That's how serious derivative immunity is. Anything you tell them, they can't use against you. And I said, well, you know what? Even if you can't use it against me, you're going to go after the farmers, shake them down, end the whole thing. And 2-year-old Jasmine, who drinks a bottle of raw milk every day, isn't going to have a bottle of raw milk every day. And I'm going to have to live with myself for it. Take me to jail. I'm not going to testify. So the court rules against me and says you have to testify, and if I don't comply, I'm going to be in contempt of court. All right? And if you don't know what that means, it means basically go to jail until you answer the questions. How long is that? 50 years, 20 years? At some point, you're going to go in and argue this is cruel and unusual punishment, because you can't just put someone in jail for the rest of their life because they don't want to answer questions. So all this stuff is going on. I went and talked to my local sheriff, and I said, look at what they're doing. This is a total scam, because the sheriff, if you don't know it, is the highest authority in the county. And that's not coming from Max Kane. That's coming from the Supreme Court of the United States of America. And the case was the biggest states' rights case ever ruled. It was the Prince and Mac case, and it was ruled in 1996. And everyone should study that case. It's the biggest, it's the 10th Amendment, which is the second most powerful amendment in the Constitution. The most powerful amendment is the 9th Amendment. And we're going to talk about that before the end of the day, I guarantee it. So I talked to my sheriff because the sheriff doesn't have to listen to the judges. He doesn't have to listen to anyone. He can do whatever he wants. You know the sheriff's jurisdiction trumps the FDA, the DEA, ATF, USDA. The sheriff is the only elected law enforcement officer in the country. His jurisdiction trumps the President of the United States. That's right. And that came from the Supreme Court of the United States. All right, so now I'm talking to my sheriff, you know, and it just so happens the sheriff grew up on raw milk. I'll tell you what, the cosmos were in order that day. You know, all of a sudden there was a lot of light at the end of the tunnel, and the end of the tunnel wasn't as far as I thought it was. So he says, well, what do you want me to do? Well, I recently read, here's what I asked him to do. I said, I want you to be in court with me, and if the judge orders the bailiff, does everyone know what a bailiff is? A bailiff is a sheriff deputy. And he sits in court, and he's the guy with the handcuffs, and when the judge says take him away, he's the guy who takes you away. So I said, I want you to be in court with me, and when the judge tells the bailiff to take me away, I want you to go to the bailiff and tell him to stand down. Yeah. All right, now look, there's 3,000 people in my town, all right, and there's a lot of old-timers there, and I'm the new guy who's been there for like 4 years, you know, and the sheriff's been there, went to high school his whole life, and he says,
what was his name?
His name was Gene Carey. Gene Carey. And he says, you want me to tell him to stand down? The judge has been sitting in good standing on the bench for 20 years, and you want me to go against him in the town of 3,000 people? I said, yeah, you know, I just want the truth. You know, is that too much to ask? And he says, man. He says, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. Because it's if. They haven't ordered you to jail yet, but if you go to jail, I'm going to put you on house arrest, and you can just stay at home and play with the kids all you want. So that was great.
So what happened?
We're not there yet. I mean, this story is live and direct. You're not going to hear the end of it because it's going on right now. So I file an appeal, $200, and we go in. I got an attorney to motion. I actually filed the motion. So the judge rules against, you're going to love this story. The judge rules against me and says you have to answer the questions. They pick a day, pick a time, all this stuff. I'm supposed to show up. I show up, I'm in my suit, you know, and no shiny shoes, and I'm walking into the deposition, which is in the courthouse, and the court clerk is over here. And just because they rule against you, all right, and you file an appeal, doesn't mean that the court order still doesn't get enforced. For instance, a lot of people appealed their case from jail, you know? So just because you file an appeal doesn't stop the court order. So I already filed the appeal. So in order to stop the court order, you have to file what's called a motion for relief pending appeal, which basically means the state, if they win the case, they can get their relief after the appellate court makes a decision. So I'm walking into the deposition, and we got a dozen or 20 people there, you know, because whenever you do this stuff, people got to come with, and cameras everywhere as much as you can. And I go over to the court clerk, file the motion for relief pending the appeal. I mean, this is all within like a 30-second time span. Run over to the deposition where I'm supposed to be, you know, because they time and you're supposed to be there. And I said, you know, you've been served. Have a nice day. And I ran out. And everyone's there and like they don't know what to do. So then we got a hearing about 3 weeks later. The judge ruled he suspended his own order under the argument that if I give testimony at this time, all right, and then the appellate court rules in my favor, it's like a Pyrrhic victory. I already gave testimony. There's no way I can take my testimony back.
That's right.
It's impossible. So he said, you know what? We had the judge suspended his own order. Do you know what that means? That's serious. You know, getting a judge to suspend his own order, it's like I'm looking at the cosmos again, thinking about the sheriff drinking raw milk, and I'm like, all right, second victory, we're doing good. So the case is on appeal now. Now in the appellate court, you don't go in front and have oral arguments. Everything's done on written briefs. So $10,000 for that. I don't have the money. So I wrote the first brief myself, and I worked my butt off on this thing, and I'm telling you, this is one of the finest briefs the appellate court ever saw, and I put my heart and bones into that. When I filed that brief, they said the clerk of the Wisconsin Supreme Court asked me, "Am I an attorney?" That's what she said. That's what she said, and I said, "Absolutely not." But you know, I wish I was, but I'm not. So then the state came back with their brief, and then I hired Elizabeth Rich. She's the vice president of the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund to make the final brief for $3,000. You know. So that's how appellate procedure works. The appellant gets to hit their brief, the state rebuts with their brief, and then the appellant gets the final word. So you get to sandwich their argument real good. So appeals are in favor of the appellant, and they should be, because you're going against tremendous odds because you already got the ruling against you. You know, so in the Wisconsin Court of Appeals, they rule on 3,000 cases a year, and it takes about a year to get a ruling. So we're expecting a ruling in probably July of this year. So everything is in limbo until then. So it's like happy time. But anyway, my wife and I are prepared, regardless of what the court says. We're going to keep moving forward. And if I got to do some time, that's fine, because I understand the concept of food freedom and the concepts of falling in love with your farmer, which is what I want to get into now, and then we're going to probably open this up into a town hall meeting and discussion and stuff.